The program, but better late than never. We have the Wednesday edition of Real Talk with Keith Smith with Scott Morris in the house, and we have questions and comments already coming in. Mainly, where are you guys at? When are you guys starting? So we're going to start here. Judah Wickauer has done some troubleshooting, the director, which we appreciate. Scott, before we start the program, you know some of the questions that have come in about rates ticking down, how they've impacted your business. We'll talk about that. And the expectations, where they're going to go. Keith was highlighting this when he was in studio. You've been damn accurate throughout all of this, Scott Morris.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So far, so good.
No pressure.
I think what it comes down to, I'm going to remain accurate. People asking about rates. We've seen like a huge rebound in the last 48 hours. So we went through a week of continued decline and that's people big money, institutional money moving into the bond market, and then now we're starting to we're not seeing negative job reports, and that's kind of what everybody was leaning on. And we talked. There's been some chatter about we're starting to see
some slow hiring.
Inflation has started to peak, maybe. Hopefully, I didn't drink the Kool-Aid last time. I'm not going to drink the Kool-Aid this time. I think that we continue to see some negative inflation numbers, and until we see true negative jobless numbers, mortgage rates are going to climb back up near 6%, and then they're going to come down. They're going to trade in this 5 to 6% range for the foreseeable future. What's funny is what hits the media is typically a couple days after what's actually happening. So I saw somebody post in Facebook land yesterday, and in Realty World, I just heard from my lender that rates are in the 4s again, and it's like they were, and now they're not.
Okay, so a lot to unpack here. We're on screen. We got a late start for those that are asking here. We had some tech issues to start the program, but the show nevertheless goes on. Scott Mortgage Morris, guys, of Ross Mortgage here with Real Talk with Keith Smith on a Wednesday. So let's talk about what you're talking about here. We'll go back and forth in Kornheiser Wilbon fashion. You don't think inflation, you're not drinking the Kool-Aid, you don't think inflation has peaked or plateaued. You're not buying that yet.
I'm not there yet.
Okay.
And I'm not there yet because we're at 2.5% Fed rate, and we're still seeing a 9% inflation.
Like 8.2.
Peak.
Okay.
But that's, that's not I still don't say that's a true number. In some categories we've seen 30% increase in inflation, and some we've seen 5. So when we get to these averages, and then you got the CPI, the ECPI, you've got all these different these categories of what numbers are actually true, and the Fed's saying that they want to see it was a 3% neutral. Now we're talking about a 4% neutral. That means we're going to have at least another 275 BIP increases, or whether they do that in another 75 and then bust it into maybe a 50 and a quarter. They're going to get to 4% on a Fed rate. That's what they're navigating towards.
That's their goal.
It's what they're navigating towards.
It's at 2.5 now. The reason I asked them if inflation has peaked or plateaued is that's very much determining and influencing what the Fed's doing with rates. So what the Fed's doing with rates is going to obviously influence what he does professionally with issuing or approving mortgages, and it's certainly impacting the realtors watching the program right now that are asking questions.
I think one of the questions was, how did the dip in rates affect my business, or did it at all? So what I've seen, I haven't had a big differential in number and in applications overall. We've had some spikes and we've had some dips, but like when you look at a month-over-month basis, we've been pretty consistent. And again, I'm saying rates I don't think are what is driving buyer activity so much as consumer confidence and people who are making transitions in life, whether it's this house is too small, we're a growing family, we've got to do something else, we don't like each other, or we're getting divorced, now we both need different houses, or I'm keeping this house and he's going to go do that, or she's going to go do this. Those are the fundamentals that I've seen to continue to drive applications and real estate transactions.
Okay, that's a good sizzle reel right there, Judah Wickower. I'll play devil's advocate for the sake of a talk show. The consumer confidence, from my perspective, maybe a little level of sophistication required here. Consumer confidence seems to me tied to what the Fed's doing with rates. Every time they come out on TV and say, we're going to jack up the rates, we're going to move the rates, we're going to do this, the markets respond.
It has to do with it has to do with the
national media.
The media that tells people how confident that they should be or feel. Whatever media you intake is typically some sort of reflection of your views of attitude. And if everybody's doomsdaying, then all of a sudden your consumer goes, gosh, or not just your consumer, your professionals, and then they start vomiting the negativity. It just really depends on where it's coming from and what your attitude towards that is. If you're looking at the fundamentals, I've been saying first quarter of next year is kind of really when we get into a recessionary period and the Fed changes things. I was just listening to somebody this morning who's much greater professional in that sense than I am, and he's saying second quarter, third quarter. So the bond market right now, if they are taking on that frame of mind, and that's part of where this is coming from, we're gonna see another run in bonds. So we were down to 2.6, 2.5x. We're gonna see a run up back to 3.2. We're gonna see, and as that run up occurs, you're gonna see mortgage rates ride with it. So I think we're going to get closer to 6%. But then you're gonna see as we get closer to real recessionary impact for businesses and layoffs and negative jobs reports, then the bond market's going to have its own shift moment, and you're going to see there'll be pullbacks. So, and we're constantly going to be in this tug of war between now and we're going to be in a tug of war between 5 and 6% for the foreseeable future until we hit the true numbers where inflation does come back down and the Fed has exhausted its policy, and then they start getting into a more of an easing and business-friendly monetary mindset, less hawkish mindset, and then you'll see rates come back down. And I think when I say come back down, I think we'll land in the 4.5 range.
Scott Morse, guys, Ross Mortgage on the show. Kevin Yancey calls it the scare media.
It's fear porn. Yeah, absolutely.
We have, and some of it, Keith Smith, good morning. Some of it's different than others. We prefer CNBC and this particular studio. We talked about earlier in the show of how they're looking for reasons why the markets will fall in the next days or weeks, even though they've been strong of late. So I've kind of taken the approach over the last week that it seems to be commodities dropping, gas dropping, oil dropping, groceries are dropping. It seems to be certain levels of inflation seem to be peaked or plateaued. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid as a reflection of that peak or plateau and the fact that these rate hikes have already been baked into the market. You've seen all three indices doing really well over the last 2 weeks. It seems to be a level of confidence returning like we haven't seen before.
Well, we say that, but then you see today we're starting to see so we're seeing some thinning of the 2-year, 10-year spread, meaning that the 2-year we're getting less inverted. But at the same time,
right.
At the same
time, that's a positive.
That is a positive, but in the last 48 hours, that shifted again back towards the 2-year
closer to inversion.
Yeah. Well, it's all well. We're inverted, but we're getting to a worse inversion as the U.S. 10-year sells off again.
Kevin Yancey, respect what you're saying. He says do your own research, although he's indicated he enjoys watching these programs. So did your business uptick?
In the last week?
Yeah.
Last month was a big uptick just for contracts. And I think that has a lot to do with inventory and from an application standpoint, we're kind of like right on target. That we finished the month, on average, or a little higher than where we've been for the rest of the year. But that wasn't in the last week. That was more at the beginning of the month. And then this week, we're tracking seemingly average numbers. So no, I haven't seen a real negative or positive effect from a 7-day or 10-day better mortgage rate numbers.
Because, the story today when I woke up on CNBC was after 5 weeks, and this is a national number, and obviously this market's different, after 5 weeks of drops in applications, we saw this past week an uptick, which is another good news, which I saw as another positive KPI for macro economy. The inventory is getting stickier. You follow this as much as I do here. We're seeing the inventory around here staying on the market longer, still relative. Single-digit days are now turning into...
You're seeing more price reductions.
Price reductions, your take on this?
I mean, that is... So I posted something the other day, it's probably from last week's show. I had somebody say, well, do you think, where's the shift from a seller's market to a buyer's market? It's like, well, the inventory has to come back. I think you have to look at inventory as a living organism. And it's just been decimated over the last 24 months. So until we get back to a 30-day average kind of on market, until inventory has the room to expand again, there's going to be properties that are not prime. Not everything is the best thing at any price point, and those are the properties that are going to continue to have more days on market until they find someone who makes that their something. And then you're going to have properties that are prime at different price points that draws everyone's attention, and they're gonna be snatched up right away. I think with rising interest rates, what we're seeing is less investor activity towards those properties because the cash flow doesn't look as enticing as it once did. And so as we see some of that come off the table and we see inventory grow a little bit and become this more available thing, sellers are going to be in the driver's seat, especially for what we'll call the prime properties at any price point.
Let's cut that content. J-Dub's right there. Philip Dow's watching in Scottsville. We've dubbed him the king of Scottsville. Something I was reading recently was indicating home prices are coming down, which will impact the sellers. Also, during this time, you will see less people putting their house on the market who may want to sell. We can't say.
I think that's an interesting take. So what you're seeing there is less people wanting to put their house on the market is going to depend on the needs of the people, and that goes back to the everyday situations that create real estate transactions. These people still have a ton of equity, and if they need to take advantage of that equity, whether it be to refinance and take some cash out to get rid of 18% credit cards
or higher,
yeah, or auto loans or whatever that situation is for them, or to take that equity and move it into a smaller property because they're aging out of and they don't want to cut grass anymore, or a growing property because a bigger property because of a growing family, they have the opportunity to do that. So I don't think that that's a reason for people not to want to list, because at the end of the day, what we're seeing, I see more of is mid-sized builders who are asking $30,000 to $40,000 for the same model of a home that they built that last year they sold at a certain price. Now they're seeing those sit for 70 days on market, and it's like, well, there's a ceiling to that, and two, what does that appraise? Because if you've got a house that the only copies of that you have sold have been at X price point, and now you're trying to increase that, an appraiser is going to go out there and probably shut that down.
Yeah, that's a very good take right there. Yesterday we talked about the credit card balances for the American consumer. They jumped 13%, the highest jump in the last 20 years. And we also talked household debt. is now over 16 trillion because of inflation here. So that follows up what you're saying, the opportunity to refinance and bundle all this together at a lower rate to minimize monthly debt service payments, which is what you're talking about. I asked this of Alex Erpy, and I was eager to ask this of you. How vulnerable is the American consumer right now?
So that's a great point. And you look at companies like, there's a lot of we'll call them internet banks, mortgage-focused banks that are opening up home equity line of credit products. And that's something that they've never done before. And the purpose that they're doing it for is to increase their volume, even though, so pre-steroid era, they were running roughly the same numbers that they were now, and they were happy making that level of money. But from a CEO, how do we keep up with the pace that we were just delivering, especially for these ones that are publicly traded, or even if they're privately owned? How can we make more money? How can we go back to that thing that we were just doing? They're like, how can I get that high again? Is what they're really saying.
And you think it's a HELOC?
I think if there is a danger, it's in those companies marketing on let's not only just your mortgage, we'll capture. Americans are going to go spend that money. So you put these people you let them capture that debt in a home equity line of credit, and then they're going to go run those credit cards up again. That is your next.
There's your bubble.
There's your bubble. That's your next. If this breaks on the back of the consumer, that's the next thing. If we worry about from a debt standpoint, and that's your next housing market problem.
Because you're saying right now you are not as worried because of the massive equity in people's homes. But what you're saying is you're going to start seeing these HELOCs that prey on that equity in the houses. People will take the HELOC opportunity because it's easy to get. They'll bundle their credit card debt, their auto loan debt into this HELOC. Like that, the equity evaporates and disappears, and then they're going to rack up debt again on credit cards.
100%.
That's terrifying. That's terrifying. He has accurately called things on Wednesdays here on Real Talk.
We're 2 years from seeing that being a real impact, because if we'll go through a dip and then we'll see rates adjust again, and that's when. So I think we're 2 years from how ugly that actually gets, because they're just starting to market these products. But once they do, and then and you got to give people the time to hear about them,
yeah.
Take action, and then default. And that's the path to default.
Okay, well then educate the audience how the product works. Let's say you have, let's use an easy number, $100,000 of equity in your home. You certainly got a huge boost over COVID and these inflationary times. $100,000, let's say, just for the sake of conversation. A HELOC offers what on $100K of equity if you have good credit? I guess it also depends on how much debt you have with your auto.
What you're trying to capture.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is this is a way to erode that equity that they're building. So
I totally get what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. Is the HELOC 75%?
So you can do it. So
is that LTV right there?
So you can go to 100 on some products. I don't know what. So and I say that. So on I like to call them. When we talk about down payment assistance programs for entry-level homes, they're doing that with essentially a second. So they're capturing a second mortgage for 3.5% on an FHA loan. So where you got a primary that's carrying 97.5 or 96.5, and then you've got the second that picks up the 3.5 difference. But what I'm talking about, I don't know what the parameters are that these companies are setting for what they're going to allow you to go up to, whether it be 90, 95% or of CLTV, but it's going to exist, and the more that these banks are capturing that equity, the less it opens up the path to. It's a straw to suck up the money.
Yeah.
And once that's done, then we're back into people can't just. It's like, oh my God, I can't make this mortgage payment. I'll sell my house.
But you can't sell because you got nothing to sell. And if you're selling, you're probably underwater at that point.
Right.
So you're owing people.
This is the path back to what got us in trouble.
Scott Morris on a Wednesday here. What is the Is that a floating rate on a HELOC generally?
So it depends on exactly how it's set up. So some of them they'll adjust during certain periods, or if they let's say you keep it open and never use it, and then or you use it, you pay it off, and then you dip back into it. Well, you could dip back into it, and the rate be significantly different than the first time that you used it. So that's another danger. Like I had somebody that had one adjust recently, and they were like, I didn't even know this was a thing, and we're doing a cash out to get them out of the HELOC. They're like, I'd much rather pay off all my debt than dump it back into this, and then, so.
Travis Hackworth in Danville for Scott Morris. Travis says this: it seems the trend for millennials is a smaller home because of a smaller family. What will the market look like, Scott, in the near future and long term with boomers with larger properties moving out and competing for those same houses? And what will happen with the larger properties? Will they be converted to smaller homes for people to afford, like duplexes and triplexes? That's a good question. So we know that phenomenon is happening right now. The baby boomers, the empty nesters, going after what would otherwise be starter homes, smaller homes that are able to be managed. The boomers have larger cash positions because they're able to sell their existing larger house and take that cash and buy an entry-level house, which is very much impacting the first-time home buyer, the millennial and the Gen Zer. His question is, are we starting to see the deprioritization of these massive homes?
I don't know that we're really
not in this market.
Seeing that in this market at this point. We've certainly seen it over time. So if you look at different parts of Charlottesville or Richmond or Northern Virginia, and you saw what was once a thriving colonial home that's now been, East High Street was a perfect example for decades and decades, to where you had these beautiful old colonials that had just been run down, busted into like a 6-unit with
turn it to Belmont Barbershop.
Yeah. And I don't know that we're going to have neighborhoods full of McMansions that are then busted into multifamily dwellings. I don't see that. I mean, we've got a people over housing problem that has yet to be solved, and you're more likely to see, at least in the near term, more apartment buildings being built to capture that, because then they keep you in the debt slave. I can't save to buy a house because I'm paying this much in rent cycle, as opposed to busting up existing large McMansions into multi-unit family dwellings.
You got Jackson Bonnet in Richmond for Scott Morris with a question. How have your clients been impacted with rates going up and balances now being harder to pay? Scott.
Balances being harder to pay. So this is, we're talking about fixed mortgage rates. So
I think he's probably talking the credit card debt. Clients coming across your table with some credit card debt.
So, I mean, I've got, everybody gets in trouble. Nobody wants to admit they're in trouble. That you have to have people who are already fiscally conservative who are coming to the table with that, or they've come to they want to make a move and have realized that they can't, or there's some sort of pain position that puts them in front of someone going, all right, I need to fix this problem. It doesn't matter what the problem is. It could be monetarily, a drinking thing, like I'm fat now, I used to be skinny, I want to be skinny again. Like, what do we got to do? So most people, I don't know that I have that conversation with how they've gotten into tons of credit card debt. It's one-offs that say, hey, I want to go fix this now. My clients overall, or if we're talking about that rate increase between March and today, it's driven people from one price point to another, but they're still out there making decisions. They still, if their goal is to get in a home, they're still working towards that.
Well said. Well, a couple more questions here, guys, on a Wednesday. And for those that are asking, we started the program a little late today with some tech issues, but Judah Wickower troubleshooted those today and got us online. Thank you to Judah for doing that. The follow-up to that is how much has the floating debt rate moved, roughly? And I know everyone has a different circumstance because it's based on credit score. Yeah, it's based on outstanding debt, what
they're doing. Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
What other balances you have. But I think his point was, anyone who's making a credit card payment now knows that payment is higher than what it was at the beginning of the year because the rate is tied to prime and prime's gone up. So the question is, with less money each month, how has that impacted buying power for some of your clients? Which I think you answered well. It's perhaps diminished in some circumstances where the clients you have that have deep cash positions, it's not really affected.
Or even those with, let's say, somebody who's not a huge earner, but they've decided that they've put themselves on a path to want to purchase a home. I don't see them carrying huge credit card balances. Student loans may be a problem, but that's we could do a whole show.
That's a whole show
on that. Somebody who now. Again, when I say that my overall applications haven't changed, what I do go through, and this is just ebbs and flows of doing business, is like I'll go through a period, and that could be last year, this year, anytime, where I get a ton of people who want to buy but aren't ready yet. And some of those people, some of those entering the market or wanting to enter the market may need some coaching on how to, they're not in a position to take out a home equity line of credit or refinance some of their debt. They just need to buckle down and come up. Maybe you listen to Gary Vee, go out, do some yard selling, like come up with a second hustle to knock that debt down in order to put themselves into a position to be able to buy.
Gary Vee, a huge fan of retail arbitrage and also going to yard sales and finding other people's trash and turning it into your gold, and then selling it online with eBay and Amazon. If you follow Gary Vee at all, you see that he has a passion for this and really just empowering people of how to make money on their own. Comments from Keith Smith. Real Talk with Keith Smith is the show. Keith Smith enjoying some R&R right now. He says this, to add some numbers to this conversation, in the Charlottesville-Albemarle Association footprint, since Monday, the last 3 days, 28 homes have come. 28 homes came on the market and 58 went pending. Of the pending sales, the median numbers, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2,000 square feet, 6 days on market with a contract median price of $406K. It still shows that entry price point is selling all day, every day.
Oh yeah, and I think, and what I've seen, that 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath is like that's your
sweet spot.
That's your sweet spot. Like when you get into some of these old like dated homes, that 3-bedroom, 1 bath, that's like a pain point for So for those out there who are wondering like how do I make my home more valuable, go add a bathroom. I think that's the key.
This is a follow-up question from Laura. How many of your clients on average have student loan debt you're processing loans for?
A lot.
Over 50%?
Over 50%.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what's rough estimate on what that balance is? Are we talking 6 figures?
Now that varies.
Okay.
Here's what drives me crazy. And what really grinds my gears. When you look at people who get into social work and teachers and they're forced into an advanced degree to get a to make $50,000 a year, it's like
you got to choose your words carefully here because I have a feeling I know where Scott Morris is going.
That's where the system. I mean, it's a broken system.
It is a broken system, and Lee was mentioning this on Monday. Lee Alberson. He said this, and this is a rocket scientist, Lee Alberson, now CEO of Claiborne Education.
Scott Morse, not a rocket scientist.
Jerry Miller, not a rocket scientist, okay? I have a microphone and I drink some iced coffee in the morning and some cold beer in the evening. But Lee said this, when he was 22 years old, he had to fill out 2 sheets of paper to get 6 figures deep of student loan debt. It took him 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. 3 months ago, he bought a house with his wife, and they pretty much had to give like their second cousin to get that loan. He says, you're 22, it takes you less than 5 minutes to get 6 figures deep in student loan debt.
Yeah.
And now we're grown-ass people with 2 great jobs, and we're trying to buy a house that's an asset that we can touch, and it took us 90 days to do the work.
The Egyptology is my favorite, like the pyramid scheme. Like literally, you can go borrow money to get a degree that can't earn you income.
There you go.
And then you got to go get a PhD to teach other people how to. It's just such a trash system.
It's predatory.
So predatory.
Yeah, go after 22-year-olds and say, here's as much money as you want to go to school. But then when you try to get a house, it's extremely difficult for it, and you're still trying to pay for that loan that you had at school.
Yeah. That we allowed you to borrow money for when we knew that you weren't going to earn income from it,
and had really no shot of paying it back anytime soon.
Yeah.
And you would be straddled with this. So we talked about this, and I was having this conversation with a friend, Dean, and Dave Ramsey zings the millennial generation because they're enjoying too many lattes. The reality is it's this and the fact that wages haven't kept up with inflation, especially in major metros.
Dave Ramsey is trash.
Oh, we got that.
Dave Ramsey spent years and years and years and years telling people don't buy a house unless you have 20% saved, all of these things. And then what does he do? He farms all of the people who are Dave Ramsey supporters, and he then sells those leads to realtors, and now it's the best time to buy in Dave Ramsey's world in the history of ever. The dude's full of shit.
There you go. Scott Morris, I like it today. More comments coming in for Scott. When Scott brings it like this, the comments respond. This question, if you have student loan debt, what percentage of that should be paid off before you consider taking on a mortgage debt, in your opinion?
It depends on how it's structured. I mean, if you can get away with if you can get into an income-based repayment debt and you can start having a mortgage, I don't care if you never pay that student debt in whole. Like you should. I mean, depending on what it is, if you can manage it. Some people were forced to go into six-figure debt to take on jobs that required that they're never
going to get paid $44K a year.
They're never going to make the money to pay that back. But can you build equity and prosperity by having a home and your family and all of these other things? Absolutely. Go do that. So get into an income-based repayment plan on the student loan debt, and that is your burden to bear. And then go out and create a savings and a path toward building a home that you can actually get something out of, that you can then you're not paying someone a rising rent. You've got a fixed payment for 30 years that you're going to carry forward, whether you be police, fire, nurse, teacher, or whatever if that's what you're doing inside of a community that makes you feel good, you can play the student loan game. If you can stay income based on the repayment, you're never going to repay that loan. It's something that's going to be there forever. But you can still come up with ways to purchase a home and build a life.
Paul McCarter of Avenue agrees with you on your take of Dave Ramsey. He calls him awful. Paul McCarter does. Paul, welcome to the show. You're getting perspective from the realtor Dan Pettit. Dan Pettit says, "What is the average credit card debt for clients at your desk?"
Again, depends on the personality. Like you've got savers and you've got spenders. Sometimes those people marry each other. It really just depends. In general, I don't see a lot of people coming to buy a house who are heavy credit card.
Who carry balances. They use the credit card.
I see people who are already homeowners who over years and family growth have run up credit card debt, and they may need to either sell or capture equity from that home in order to get themselves back into a good position. I had a great example of someone who they could not buy at a price point that they wanted, even though they were both good earners, but they had the advantage of being able to sell their home, pay off all their debts, live with their parents for 30 days until the debts reported, paid by the creditors. We rescored them, got them into a price point that got them what they wanted, and they were able to move forward with there, but now they're very debt conscious, so they don't want to put themselves back in that position. And I hope that they don't, but there's, again, we're Americans. That's, if you take on as much debt as you're capable of, and if you can die with some of it still on the table, then let the world work that out.
Was that the world? Is that our children?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that the next generation?
They're not going to be burdened by that. Typically, I don't think they can come after your kids for most of your stuff.
I think you might be right there. So I'm glad we did today's show. You brought some ammunition today. What are you following the rest of the week as we are now on the 3rd of August?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's my son's second birthday.
Happy birthday.
Colton, what's up, dude? I hope you have a very Spider-Man day, dude.
He had a Spider-Man birthday cake?
Yeah, really.
He's got the best hair of any 2-year-old I know. Is he 2?
He's 2.
The best hair of any 2-year-old I know?
That's, what else was the question?
What are you following? What's the rest of the week? What are you following?
The rest of my week is going to be, a little different. But in general, market-wise, I think we're going to see we're going to see rates go up again. I think this little seesaw, this tug of war that we've been playing. I think the big news today, the takeaway was OPEC saying that they're only going to increase 100,000 barrels, which means they probably have a negative forecast at some point. They don't want to get into overproducing and then having that eat back into their price point. But and from a big political takeaway there, it's like we went over there and asked them for something, and they said, "Nah, bro, we ain't gonna do that." So it just It's go out there, spend time with your family, do the things that you really enjoy. It's that time, the time of year kids are getting back to school. We've got a huge back to school drive at Lynn Park, 5 to 7 in Culpeper on Friday. We'll be giving away notebooks, pencils, glue, all the stuff that teachers requested, and that's for homeschoolers too. So if you've got a family who's needing to put something together and you're in the area, don't hesitate to come by. Also, Culpeper news: Chick-fil-A is supposed to open back up tomorrow. They've been shut down for months. It's a huge thing personally for me.
Chick-fil-A Culpeper was shut down for months?
Yeah, they're like a huge reno.
Okay, and it's opening tomorrow.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Scott Morris, breaking news here.
Breaking news
on Real Talk with Keith Smith. That's big time right there, dude. Good job.
Thanks, man.
Very much like your takes. You are direct and straightforward, and we know where you stand, and we respect that. His name is Scott Morris, guys, of Ross Mortgage. Scott Morris of Ross Mortgage, available on all social platforms and always quick to respond. A man whose team has seen probably every circumstance in the mortgage business. Judah Wickauer should get some props. He got us back online. We had some tech issues today to start the show. We are at the mercy of the interwebs, and we'll leave it at that. My name is Jerry Miller. The I Love Seville show is up in 48 minutes. We will chatter and spotlight Peggy Donowitz, who owns the One Bridal Salon. She's selling her business, and she will let us know why she is doing so in about 45 minutes. Thank you, Scott.
100%.
Thank you, Judah. You guys have a good one. Take care.